Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, back with another Market Watch episode. So for today's episode, we're taking a look at some cards trending on the market as a result of the release of Justice Hunters. So we had the new set drop just last week, and even though a bunch of product was delayed across North America, many people did actually manage to get their hands on the set. As a result, at OTS Championships from this past weekend, there were a ton of Canine, Yummy, and Draco Tail variants that saw competitive success. Of course, it's still early on in the format, so we're going to see players look to optimize builds and experiment with new tech options, but for now we're talking about some of the cards that are currently trending on the market that players have seen early success with. Let's get started. Kicking things off, let's take a look at Canine 17 Isuna. So the Canine theme is the most hyped one to come out of Justice Hunters, as it was extremely dominant over in the OCG when combined with the Vanquish Soul strategy. Here in the TCG, early results definitely seem to indicate that Vanquish Soul Canine is a tier 1 strategy, but Yummy and Draco Tail have also been pretty relevant, and it's still extremely early on in the format. However, I do think that players know that the Canine cards are the most splashable and can be combined with a ton of other decks, so Isuna remains the most expensive card in the set. Of course, Isuna is really broken. You can special summon her for free if your opponent used an effect in the hand or graveyard this turn, and on summon it sends Lupus to the graveyard. Lupus can then revive itself and quick exceeds with the two monsters, which allows you to make a rank 5 like an Ash Knight or Ripper on the opponent's turn, or you could even go into something crazy like a Typhon. With the cards from Justice Hunters, I think the fact that everyone has been tearing into the product has actually caused a lot of the card prices to fall. Izunas are still pretty expensive, but the priciest Ultra in the set is currently sitting at around the $45 mark, which I think is a lot lower than a lot of players were expecting. In recent sets, collector's rares just aren't what they were before, as we're seeing CR Isuna not much higher than the Ultras at $65 to $70 per copy. And then the other thing that's worth noting is that with the Starlight rares, people are generally pulling about 3 per case, which is way more than the 1 per case that people were pulling in previous sets, so the top end ones aren't even that crazy either, as Starlight Isuna is the priciest card in the set, but is currently coming in at about $130 each. Now with Isuna, I do think that after YCS Vancouver and the upcoming ban list, this is something that might rebound back up in price, back to around $60 for the ultra rare copy. So if this is a card that you are considering picking up, since it's cheaper than a lot of players were expecting, you might want to jump on the card soon before they have a chance to bounce back up. Okay, so while we're talking about Canine, we should also talk about Cristron Sulfir. So of course, Vanquish Soul Canine is the most popular Canine variant at the moment, but we've already discussed cards like Jiaolong, Stake Your Soul, and Raisin multiple times over the last several months. However, it seems that Cristron Canine is actually a variant that's been getting a lot of attention over the last week or so. I believe that Yassine posted a video on his channel. He just won a case tournament with the deck, so go check that out if you're interested. The Cristron cards were already pretty consistent, but now you have Jokel that can bring out the level 5s from your hand and make use of them much more easily, which is pretty cool. I've mentioned this before, but for the most part, Cristron cards are historically quite cheap. They were never really that strong or relevant of a deck, so they came out in lower rarity printings and not too many people cared for them. So now, even though they are good, they just don't have that many high rarity printings for cards that people can really go out and try to buy up to make spike in price. Sulfir seems to be one of the few exceptions. This card can be special summoned by discarding a Cristron card, then you destroy a card you control. And if this card itself is destroyed, you special summon any Cristron monster from your deck. So for a little bit, Sulfir only had 1 super rare printing back in Raging Tempest, but then it got a common printing in OTS Tournament Pack 27, and it seemed like the card was just basically going to be bulk. Now, however, with the Cristron cards getting another wave of attention thanks to the release of the Canine theme, Sulfir is already trending again. The supers had hit a low of $2 to $3, but in the last week, they're now shot up to about $7 to $8 per copy. And then after that, we have those OTS 27 commons. When OTS commons first come out, they're usually just bulk. They don't really go anywhere generally, even if they are seeing some play. But with Sulfir, this is only 1 OTS tournament pack back. We're actually seeing the card moving at $3 to $4 per copy, which is pretty ridiculous. If you guys have some bulk from OTS tournament packs that you've opened within the last, say, 4 to 6 months, this is definitely a card for you guys to try to dig up and offload for some value. I do want to take a second to remind all of you to check out our website, MSTmerch.com. Now, over at MSTmerch.com, we have everything that you will need to optimize your Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournament experience. We have the basics with white, black, pink, and our new purple matted sleeves, which are my personal favorites, as well as smooth and matted sleeves to double sleeve your valuable cards and sleeves with for tournament play. But we also have some other items that you can really use to customize your collection. We have amazing foil sleeves, including some with the MST.TV logo, and dividers and subdividers so that you can keep your collection perfectly organized and easily accessible. Regardless of if you're a competitive or casual player, I'm certain that you'll find something that you will enjoy over at MSTmerch.com. Moving on, we next have Power Filter. So this is a pretty old card, and it's one of those cards that always seems to get hyped up every now and then, but never really ends up working out. This is a simple floodgate, stopping both players from special summoning monsters with 1,000 or less attack points. The idea is that this is a powerful floodgate against the Yummy deck. All of the Yummy monsters have really low attack points, so this card just tries to stop them from playing the game completely. I believe that even if they have the field spell Mignon up, it only affects monsters on the field, right? So they can't attempt to link summon Snatchy, for example, even while Mignon is on the field, even though Mignon would boost it above 1,000 when it would eventually be summoned, right? Because Power Filter is active. I think the cool thing about Power Filter is that it can still put in work going second. Part of what makes Yummy so strong is that they can do a lot of things on both players' turns. So even if your opponent has a board, you activate Power Filter, you force them to burn the Herald of the Arclight on it, or if they don't have Herald because they went into Obedience School, now they just can't really play the game because they can't tag out with their synchros, and they can't synchro summon with the Link 1 either. Now, of course, all of the same concerns exist with this card as ever. This is really limited in its application since it's only good against the one strategy, and this card is also pretty easily outed by cards like Harpy's Feather Duster, Lightning Storm, maybe Cosmic Cyclone makes its way back into the format. The one thing that the card does have going for it is that I've seen a couple of lists over in the OCG that have actually topped with this card in the sideboard, so maybe that's a sign that this card will finally have a chance to shine. For right now, the original super rares from the Duelist Genesis are actually quite pricey at $15 per copy, but the more surprising jump is with the common from OTS Tournament Pack 16. It was a fair while ago, but those were under $1 each just a few weeks ago, but out of nowhere they have shot up and are now at $10 lowest on TCG Player, and we actually see several sales pretty close to that mark. Just like with Sulfefnir, this is another card that you guys should definitely try and dig up out of your bulk, since it's free value that's just waiting to be offloaded. Next up, let's talk a little bit about Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries. So this is another card that some people are trying to hype up once again. Ghost Reaper is one of those cards that always seems amazing in theory, but just never really ends up working out. If your opponent has more monsters on the field than you do, you discard this card, reveal a card in your extra deck, and then banish all copies of that monster from your opponent's extra deck. Now, historically, this card is something that people have tried to use in Tier 0 formats where one deck is extremely dominant, or in formats where some decks rely heavily on a single extra deck monster. In this case, I do think that some players are considering using Ghost Reaper as a tech option against Yummy, because banishing all three of their copies of Yummy Snatchy means the deck doesn't have any tuners, so they can't really play the game at all. Now, fortunately, Yummy can play out of it since they can use the field spells to return Snatchy to the extra deck, but Snatchy is how they were accessing the field spell in the first place, so they'd have to find a way to draw into the field spell and then get it into the graveyard. So yeah, I don't know how to feel about this one. I know that Lucas Sacco hates this card with a passion, and to be fair, Ghost Reaper hasn't seen any sort of competitive success in the last few years, but I guess it's always possible that it could be good. Anyways, with this one, we have a bunch of printings of Ghost Reaper, and they're mostly pretty cheap. It's just the higher end printings that we have to worry about recently. The ultimate rares from OTS Tournament Pack 20, those were down at like $5 to $6, but they're now up at around $15 each. And then we also have the two QCR printings of this card. My god, those alternate arts are so ugly. They're around $13 each. But then we have the original art of Ghost Reaper. That's actually one of my favorite card arts in the entire game. Those QCRs are currently running right around the $20 mark. overall, I don't know, I'm just not sold on this card being good yet, so it isn't one that I would hold on to thinking that it's going to go up any further. I'd definitely consider offloading these higher rarity copies, whatever you're holding on to, while the card is at one of the higher price points it's been at in years. On to the next one, let's take a look at Shared Ride. So in the game for the last while, searching has been extremely important. With Ryziel and Mitsurugi searching a ton, we saw Droll and Lockbird basically become a main deck staple last format, and we even saw cards like Mistaken Arrest making their way into the sideboard really consistently. However, Mistaken Arrest and Droll and Lockbird stop both players from searching, which you aren't okay with if you're playing Vanquish Soul Canine. A lot of the time, you're doing things on your opponent's turn. You want to be able to summon Razin off of Holisu and search. This is where Shared Ride has made its way into the format, it seems. With this one, it doesn't prevent searching, but it's sort of like a max C for searching, where you draw each time that your opponent searches for a card. However, this thing is different because it only applies to you. So if you search, your opponent doesn't get a draw. This is particularly good in Vanquish Soul Canine, since it can also help you with drawing into cards that you can play on your opponent's turn. So it can draw you an Isuna, it can draw you a Holisu. Hopefully it could also draw you into like hand traps or cards that you can just reveal for your Vanquish Soul effects. With Shared Ride, this card has several lower rarity printings that aren't really too big of a deal, though they are slowly each moving up to around $1 each. However, the big jump is with either the original or tin reprint secret rare printing. They used to only be $3 to $4 each, but we now see either of the secret rare versions up at around $12 to $15 per copy. This is definitely an interesting tech to consider going into next format, especially in decks where you want to be able to do things on your opponent's turn as well as just see as many cards as possible, so it might be worth grabbing a couple of these lower rarity printings for yourself to use. Next, let's take a look at Sky Striker Mecha Widow Anchor. Of course, Widow Anchor is one of the better Sky Striker spells in the game. This lets you negate the effect of a monster on your opponent's side of the field, but if you have 3 or more spells in your graveyard, you also get to take control of that monster for the rest of the turn. So with this one, there's a couple of things that we can take a look at. The first is obviously the pure Sky Striker deck, which is probably going to be playing 3 copies of this card. The other thing is that Yummy is currently playing a package of 3 Engage and 1 Hornet Drones, since they can use Hornet Drones to basically full combo with the Yummy cards. However, some players are looking to add another search target for Engage, since the card is dead if you already have Hornet Drones in rotation, and Widow Anchor is the next best option. To be honest, I do think it's more the pure deck that is hyping this card up, since I haven't really seen any successful Yummy builds that were teching in Widow Anchor. With this card, it has 4 different printings, but 3 of them are from before 2020, and 1 of them is from 2022 in Magnificent Mavens. Either of the secret rare printings of this card are going to be pretty pricey, coming in at around the $15 to $20 range. They've been around there for the last little while. The Ultras are the ones that have moved up a fair bit though, as they were around $4 to $5 each, but they've gone up to just under $10 per copy. If you are a Yummy player, I probably wouldn't bother with these, but of course you'll need to pick them up if you're wanting to play pure Sky Striker. Hopefully these do get reprinted soon, but if not, I do see them maintaining their current price point for the foreseeable future. Alright, to wrap things up, we're taking a look at one card that isn't related to Justice Hunters. It's Dogmatica Punishment. So this is actually related to some new support coming in the next core set, Doom of Dimensions. We're getting some new support for the Dogmatica theme, and one of the new cards allows you to play on turn 0 and set a Dogmatica trap from your deck on your opponent's turn, and you can use it this turn. Punishment is a really powerful disruption where you can send a monster from your extra deck to the graveyard and pop an opponent's monster. The cool thing is that you could send something like a Garura and get to draw an additional card, or an Elder Entity Entis and pop an additional card on your opponent's side of the field. The thing that is a bit rough with Dogmatica Punishment is that when you use it, you can't special summon from your extra deck until the end of your next turn after it resolves. So yeah, I don't really think that Dogmatica is going to be relevant with the new support. I think it's going to be a cool rogue deck, but probably not much more than that. Now with Punishment, this card actually was originally a common, and then it had several other printings, and then it was also in Rarity Collection 1, so this card is very easily accessible. However, it's the QCR printing that has, of course, spiked in price as the highest rarity, as they were down at about $5 to $6 each, but have now jumped up to $15 with the announcement of the new upcoming support. Keep an eye on this card. It'll fluctuate in price as we move closer to the release of Doom of Dimensions, depending on if people are excited to actually give the new support a try. Alright guys, that is all I have for today's episode. Definitely pretty cool to see all of the Justice Hunter stuff making a huge impact right away. Of course, we're going to see things change over time, and we have YCS Vancouver in just a couple of weeks, which is really going to tell us about what people think of the format. But then, of course, we have the ban list coming right after that's probably going to reduce the amount of Raziel Mitsurugi that we see in the format, as well as probably get rid of Malice completely. So who knows how things are going to change. Anyways, guys, if you did enjoy today's Market Watch episode, please make sure you let me know by hitting that thumbs up button. Make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time, guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.